Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Thanks you all for coming out on a rainy Sunday morning in October. I hear up in Hibbing it's snowing, according to Marmy. So hi, Marmy. So welcome to the class. This is our third in our four-part series on the Nine Yanas. And so I wanted to start out a little bit with a little bit of a review, especially since we've got some new people in here, and it's always good to kind of get caught up on what we've taught over the last 3 sessions. And it's a good teaching for people who are new because it is the actual progression or series of teachings as it is taught in Nyingma Lineage. You may be familiar with it, just you might not have come to the classes in the past. But for all of us, I think it's a good teaching to hear. And as we stated earlier on, Khenpo first taught this in 2008. So it's been a while since those of us who have been in the Sangha for a few years to actually understand how the teachings fit together. So where we've been so far in the past few teachings, we haven't gotten that far actually, but we've taught or talked about most of the Buddha's actual teachings. We talked about the Shravakayana, the Pratityabuddhayana, and the Bodhisattva Yana. Today we will be moving on, and actually I'll be giving an overview of the next 3 yanas, the 4th, the 5th, and the 6th, which are called the outer tantras. So with all that in mind, and as Khenpo taught when he got to this point in time in his teachings, he did say he likes to test his students. So I'm going to start out with a little bit of question and answer and make it a little bit more interactive. And some of it is stuff I haven't even taught or talked about, but it is a little bit about the yanas overall. So who can tell me what are the names of the 3 turnings of the wheel of Dharma? Because that's the framework of which we're talking about. What?
First, second, and third.
Yeah, and what are the names of the first, second, and third? Very good, Kate. So the first is the Hinayana. I'll give you a hint on that. Mahayana. And what is the third? The Vajrayana. So we've already talked about the Hinayana and the Mahayana. Today we'll be talking about the Vajrayana. This is a little bit more tricky. Who were the audiences for each turning of the wheel? So who are the audiences of the Hinayana path? I've already given you the answer. The Shravakas and the Pratityabuddhas. Who were the audiences for the Mahayana? Bodhisattvas and the Pratityabuddhas and the Shravakas. So it was a mix of Hinayana and Mahayana students. And who are the students of the Vajrayana teachings? Purely Bodhisattvas. So it's people who are on the Bodhisattva path, students who are on the Bodhisattva path that receive the teachings of the Vajrayana. And, just for fun, where were they taught? Where was the Hinayana taught? Deer Park. The Mahayana was taught at Vulture Peak Mountain. At Rajagriha. And then how about the third one's a little tricky. Where was the Vajrayana taught? It depends at various locations. Yes. At various locations in the Buddha realms. And so let's start talking about what are the topics. What were the topics of the Hinayana teachings?
4 Noble Truths.
4 Noble Truths, renunciation, or abandoning negative actions of body, speech, and mind. 12 links of interdependent origination also were part of the Hinayana teachings. And what were the topics of the Mahayana? Yes.
6 paramitas.
The 6 paramitas. Yeah. And the cornerstone is emptiness. So the prajna paramita, compassion, bodhicitta, dependent arising. And once again, in terms of abandoning, it's abandoning clinging to the self of individual and the phenomena. So that's what we've kind of had an overview of already so far in the first 2 classes. And then what are the topics, and you might not know this, what are the topics of the Vajrayana then?
Buddha nature.
Absolutely. So that is the topic that we will be moving into and talking about today at a high level. I'll probably be reading a lot from my notes as I go through that. And it's abandoning clinging to emptiness. So in Mahayana, we learn about emptiness. And the Vajrayana, we learn to abandon clinging to emptiness through the Buddha nature. So the Tathagarbha doctrine. And the Buddha nature was elaborated in great detail by Maitreya via Asanga in the 5 treatises of Maitreya. So I'm going to talk a lot about Asanga today. I think it's really interesting because basically he is the father of the Vajrayana path. He is the one who propagated it. So another way of talking about the 3 yanas, in which the 9 yanas are encapsulated within, is we've got the Sutra on the Tantras. The Hinayana and the Mahayana are both sutra teachings, and they teach interdependence, impermanence, the Four Noble Truths, and freeing self from samsara. And the Mahayana is Hinayana plus emptiness and bodhicitta, and removing the cognitive obscurations, and wisdom is attained. So within the Tantra, there is also a clarification of the Mahayana. So the Buddha nature is introduced, and methodology to speed up what you've already learned in the Mahayana are introduced. And those methodologies are the Tantra. They're the development and the completion stages. So within the Tantra is when we are introduced to practices like Kate has been teaching us throughout the summer, the white Tara practices, or how many of us are familiar with it, it is the Nundro practices. That is the introduction into the Tantra path. And any of us who have been to any of Khenpo's teachings where we have learned the Poa teachings or the practices, who've learned the Guru Yoga, who have learned Vajrasattva, and the white Tara practices, those are all tantric practices, and are involved in both development and completion stages. So we are beginning to talk about the 3rd turning of the wheel of Dharma. And the framework of the 3rd turning of the wheel, as I mentioned before, comes from the Yogacara school, which I think is very interesting. The Yogacara school started in India, in the northwestern part of India, and Asanga was a brilliant student at that time of the Mahayana, and he was studying the Prajnaparamita. And he was disappointed that he was not getting at the core of the meaning of the Prajnaparamita. There was something that was missing for him. So he decided to go into a 12-year retreat to see if he could, through that practice, come to a deeper understanding. And I think it's also important to understand that the Yogacharans, the school that he developed and the tradition that he came out of in northern India at that time, was very much a Yogan school. They were activity, and they were based in the mountain hermitages. They weren't in a monastery. So that's where that tradition comes out of. And he was in meditation for a full 12 years, hoping for a vision of Maitreya. And for 12 long years, he had an arduous experience. He almost came out of meditation, out of his retreat several times. And finally, in the end, he did have a vision of Maitreya. And at that point in time, Maitreya let him know, I've been with you the whole time. It's just because of your karma and your kleshas and your obscurations that you were unable to see me. And I think some of us have probably heard the story that Khenpo has told about, it was a Sangha who sees this suffering dog on the side of the road who is full of worms, and he compassionately licks the worms out of him one at a time, and that's when Maitreya appears to him. So it was when finally that act of compassion compelled him to have that vision of Maitreya. And Maitreya then was the guiding principle for Asanga and his teachings. So in terms of how Yogacara came to Tibet then, because Yogacara is a Mahayana school, however, instead of focusing on the emptiness, it focuses on Buddha nature. And that Buddha nature, as I said, had been described in a lot of the texts written by Asanga. The Lankavatara Sutra is one of the texts, and the 30 Verses of Consciousness is another one of those texts. The book that I had spoken to you guys all about on the first class, Understanding Our Mind, is a text written by Thich Nhat Hanh that comes out of that same tradition, and he combines a couple of Asanga's texts, his 30 verses and his 20 verses, to get a better understanding of what that Yogacaran school is. And the Yogacaran school is founded in the idea of the 8 consciousnesses. So from the Alaya consciousness, which is the ground of all, where all of our karma is housed, to the manas consciousness, which is what we cling to as a self, and then the six consciousnesses on top of that. So if you guys want to study more on that, it is a really good foundation, and it's a foundation of all the teachings that made their ways into Tibet. And there have been many different viewpoints that have been expounded in Tibet as the Madhyamaka that we know of today, but this is the foundation that was brought into Tibet. It was eventually brought to Tibet, the Yogacaran school, by Shantara-Krishna in the 8th century. So a Sangha school developed many centuries, and along the way, finally in the 8th century, Shantara-Krishna and Padmasambhava brought those teachings to Tibet. So that is the founding. The Vajrayana was founded by that third turning of the wheel that was started by a Sangha in the 4th century. I thought that was fascinating as I was preparing for this class. And that gets at the root of what we study and what we know of as Tantra today in our traditions. So, very interesting. Any questions on that?
This is prior to Nagarjuna, right? When was Nagarjuna?
It's after. Nagarjuna was 2nd century.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, they learned from those students as they were learning those, the Yogacharans. A Sangha was a brilliant student of all of that, and he later he went into meditation to get a better understanding of it. So more stuff for us to talk about and to read about. I think it's very interesting. I wanted to give you a quote that I found. As I was studying for today's class, I looked at a lot of Reginald Ray's books to get some background on a Sangha. And one of the quotes that he gave is, the Vajrayana can only be practiced in an authentic way when the practitioner is able to initially emerge from emptiness, to engage in the practice without substantializing it, and to return to emptiness at the completion of the session. Moreover, when one is moving about in the world between meditation sessions, there can never be any question of one's actually existing in a substantial way. To fall into this extreme would be to break one's tantric vows and to incur all sorts of difficulties. In addition, the gateway to the Vajrayana is empowerment, and it grants us permission to practice at this stage. And the views of the second and third turnings of the Wheel of Dharma provide the basis for the Vajrayana. The elucidation on emptiness and the presentation of the non-conceptual wisdom mind are the foundation alone upon which one should engage in the Vajrayana practices. So the goal is to achieve Buddha nature, which is in its essence is emptiness. Its nature is complete clarity, and the manifestation is compassion. It is the Dharmakaya that exists mature and complete within the heart of all sentient beings. So that's some very deep thoughts, and it might be beyond the understanding of some people. And the goal then is to be patient, because once again, as we're moving from the starting of the Nine Yanas and go along the path, we get to the higher and higher and higher teachings, and they're all built upon the earlier teachings. So it is very important to get a foundation within the earlier teachings before you start learning the more advanced teachings. And once again, that is why especially Khenpo emphasizes that it is very, very, very important to finish your Nundro or your preliminary teachings before you start engaging in any of those advanced teachings as well, because the fear is you could become confused if you don't have that solid grounding in those other ones. So I'm going to give you a high overview. That was some depth of what that Buddha nature is and what emptiness means. I'm not going to be able to do it justice here, but I do want to give you an idea of what the 4th, the 5th, and the 6th yanas are. So I'll move into that at this point in time. So the 4th yana is the Kriya Yoga Tantra, the 5th is the Chara Yoga Tantra, and the 6th is the Yoga Tantra. And these are, as I said, are all the outer tantras. They are all activity tantras, which is basically what tantra means. Kriya is the action part of Tantra, Charya is the performance Tantra, and Yoga is the union Tantra. In Kriya, the focus is more on the outer austerities, the outer cleansing, the outer purification. So there are very rigid rules around cleansing techniques of the body, cleansing techniques of the food that you eat. And whereas you move into Charya Tantra and Yoga Tantra, it's more of that internal cleansing. And that internal cleansing is then done by doing the deity practice, by doing the mantra practices as well. And it is through doing those practices over and over and over again that purification is achieved. It's almost as if it's a blessing or a siddhi that is given to you through doing that practice. So the basis is the very nature of your own mind. The path is to recognize wisdom for ourselves during meditation time. And the fruition is that the enlightened nature of our mind is actualized and manifested. And then the views. So the view of Charya and Kriya are a little bit different than the view of Yoga Tantra. So I'm going to go over that in a little bit. So the view of Kriya and Charya are very similar to the Madhyamaka. So there are 4 limits that prevent us from assessing the ultimate, and those are the 4 extremes: existence, non-existence, neither existence or non-existence, and both existence and non-existence. So the foundation upon their view is the understanding of Madhyamaka, of understanding complete emptiness, which we went into a little bit last time. They also believe that all phenomena are of the same nature. So when you're out accessing the world and you're in the world and you experience phenomena, they're of 3 natures. They're gentle, they're coarse, or they're peaceful. And these are represented by different deities that are either gentle or coarse or wrathful. And those are, let's see here, Avalokiteshvara is the peaceful deity, Manjushri is gentle, and Vajrapani is coarse. And those are 3 Buddhist families. Of course, there are other deities that represent those as well. So by meditating on those deities, you're able to come to an understanding of how all things are equal. All things are of one taste, so to speak. And then you apply that when you go out into the world, or it comes to you as a blessing from doing those practices. I don't think it's something that you could force, but you could try to practice of viewing all things as being equal. We have talked about that in the past. Like if you hear an airplane overhead versus if you hear some birds chirping, how can you bring your meditation to bear on your experience in everyday life, which is basically what the purpose is. How do you go about being in the world with that equanimity and seeing all things and experiencing all things as one taste? So these practices are geared at helping that to arise within you in your very experience so that you can experience that and be in that mode of being when you are off the cushion. So that's the view of Kriya and Charya. The view of Yoga Tantra is concerned with ultimate and relative reality. So with the ultimate, as we all know, it is the state completely free of any fabrications and conceptual fixations. It is the luminous emptiness beyond all reference points. It is your realization that you have during meditation. So a bodhisattva, when they're in meditation and they're absorbed in samadhi, they are experiencing that pure emptiness, the ultimate reality. So within the relative realm for the Yoga Tantra, this is how you experience phenomena outside of meditation when you're off the cushion. And through your meditation, you can cause your fixations on phenomena to diminish by having deep levels of meditation absorption. During meditative equipoise, you can access and realize the union of emptiness and appearance, and post-meditation, due to your meditative experiences, you experience appearances as illusory or dreamlike and interdependently arisen. So this post-meditation period relies upon the experience of union of appearance and emptiness during meditation. So it's something that's naturally arisen and comes as a result of your practice. And so within your practice, I also want to emphasize you're not trying to force that. Within your practice, you're just doing your practice. You are focusing on the deity, you're focusing on the mantra, you're focusing on dissolution of the deity and the mantra. And as a benefit, as a result of that, you will know that you have achieved that level, or you are moving the needle on your meditative practice when you start having experiences like that off the cushion. So then that brings us to what is the meditation in the tantras, in the outer tantras. The meditation is 3 parts. It's a meditation on the deity. It is to recite a mantra, and it is to take in the siddhis of the deity. Kriya and Charya, the deity is viewed as superior with qualities you want to embody. So when you're starting out, when you're a beginner on the Vajrayana path, and throughout the Vajrayana path, what the mantra and what the deity worship is all about is to create these visualizations and to affect a change in who you are, and to bring about maybe emotions or feelings that you're not familiar with, to bring about these exalted states. So when you're beginning, you are going to be looking at the deity in front of you and visualizing them in front of you and having that awe and respect as a master and a student. So you look at that deity as superior to yourself. As you move along and you get to the yoga tantra, that begins to transform, and you're viewing that deity as a spiritual friend who is equal with you. And those are the views of the meditation. Also, as you move along, things become more detailed. So in the Kriya, it's more just that deity practice. In the Charya, you begin to incorporate rays of light and blessings. You're sending rays of light out, and rays of light are coming back into you. And as that comes back into you and that deity is dissolved into you, that is how you receive those blessings. So if you can think about that as part of your mantra practice, as part of your deity practice, really visualize that light as being the essence of the Buddha, that essence that you want to incorporate into your being. Really think of that in terms of, I am in awe of this being's state of wisdom and state of consciousness, and those light rays that are coming into me are giving me those blessings that I may at one point in time receive them and experience them and transform myself. And I'm just going to go into that at a high level. I know that we've received many teachings from Khenpo on that, and that Kate is more of the expert on all of these than I, and there's a long series of classes where I'm just devoting about 10 minutes to talking about this. There are classes where you can devote, 4 or 5 sessions or hours worth of that. I wanted just to give that high-level overview so people understand what it is that we're going to be doing, especially today when we do the Vajrasattva practice, because the Vajrasattva practice is a very good practice to incorporate at this level, as it is a practice that is all about purification, and the Kriya and Charya outer tantras are explicitly about purification. So that's why I'm going to incorporate that as the practice that we will be doing today, and most of us have received that teaching from Khenpo already. So the result of Kriya Tantra is to achieve the blessings of the Buddha body, speech, and mind through the 3 families, Vairocana, Amitabha, and Ekchobhya. In Charya, you add the 4th achievement, which is the Ratna. And in Yoga Tantra, you completely eliminate karma and kleshas and the destructive mental patterns. And then the duration is different. Kriya and Charya takes 6 to 17 lifetimes. So it is speeding up the length of time it takes to achieve the results that you would achieve in the Bodhisattva Yana from 3 countless eons to a mere 6 to 17 lifetimes. Or as Steve said last time, 20 years. If we all could be so lucky. And then as you move on to the Yoga Tantra, it is going to be 3 to 5 lifetimes. So once again, the importance of knowing this is that you're building upon all these practices. You can't go ahead and just start practicing Vajrayana and expect to achieve the results in this amount of lifetimes without also doing all these other practices. So that's the beauty of the Tibetan Buddhist tradition that we have, is that we are building on all of these traditions and their successive vehicles. And as you go ahead and start practicing even the tantric levels, you can incorporate the 6 paramitas not only at the Mahayana viewpoint, but at the Vajrayana viewpoint, which is what Khenpo taught us at a very high level when he taught this class. I don't have the notes of what that means, but he did mention you can look at those 6 paramitas both at the Mahayana, and you can experience them through the view of the Vajrayana as well. Are there any questions about any of that so far? I know some of you have the handouts that I handed out last time, and we can get, those of you who don't have them, copies of them before we go today. But I wanted to take a lot of time in actually practicing the Vajrasattva practice, since Tantra is about practice, it's about activity. And then I know I went through that overview at very high level. I can't promise I'd have any answers to any questions that you might have, but if you have any questions, we could talk about it and maybe put it aside for something we need Khenpo to answer in the future as well. And then before we end the teaching, if there aren't any questions, next week we will be going over the first 2 of the inner tantras. So the 7th and the 8th tantra. We will not be covering the 9th, the Adi Yoga. That will be something that Khenpo can cover with individual students as they need. So any questions?
I have a question.
All right. I know it's going to be a good one.
Yeah, that's a good one. The difference or the sameness of observing phenomena as an illusion, as if an illusion, and what the difference is. And where does nihilism fall into this? Because for me, illusion means put your hand through it, it's an illusion. As if illusionary, that's different.
I'm not sure if I can answer that particularly, but this is what I'll offer up, and maybe we can have discussion with everyone else in the room as well. And that gets to what we were talking about, the union of appearance and emptiness. Out of emptiness, appearance occurs. If there weren't emptiness, we would not have any appearances. But because of that emptiness, that means that things aren't as solid as we think they are. And so when we have a very reified belief system where we think the world that we live in is solid and unchanging, that's one extreme, right? That's the extreme of materialism. And when we think of it as being empty, that means nothing exists. So we have these 2 extremes that we need to not fall prey to either one of them. And in the middle is the union of emptiness and appearance. And what the Bodhisattvas do, because they're at a higher level of understanding of emptiness than we are, but the practice that they engage in is to not go into nihilism and not to go into solidity. But when you're out in the world, everything looks solid, right? So everything appears as if it really exists and will never change. So one of the practices that they engage in is to see the illusory-like nature. It's not that they're gone or that you're going to put your hand through them, because
Illusory-like.
Illusory-like, right? Illusory-like, but illusory-like, and then but emptiness. Emptiness is is not like. Emptiness is emptiness. It's an open potential, right?
On the flip side is dependent origination, which is...
So when you think of it that way, I think what you're getting at is interdependent origination. We get at what you're saying, I think, what you're talking about, is illusory like, because it looks solid and independently existent, but it's not independently existent. It exists because there's all these relations with all these other phenomena that bring it into existence, and it can't exist by itself. And so that would be a great place to start looking at phenomena as illusory by thinking about that dependent origination.
Correct.
That's correct, yes.
I just want to jump in. Another thing, Ron, is that Anne was talking about a Sangha's tradition of the practice tradition of the yogis. So you have lineages that are very much scholars and very much focus on Madhyamaka and middle way. And then you have lineages that practice more in the practice lineages, and then you have ones obviously that combine them. But when you're doing, for example, development and completion stages, you will experience the answer to that question just by actually developing creation stage of the deity, and then doing the dissolution practice. That's how you bring the union of the emptiness and the appearance aspect together in practice. So you can either study it, for example, through middle way and Madhyamaka and through studying the Vajrayana, but you can also bring it, have the experience of it where that question is answered itself just through the practice. And so ideally we do both. Like we're studying with Anne right now, and then we're going to do the practice of Vajrasattva. And that's what the practices are for, is to actually have the experience of it and not just the concept of it. It's exactly that. So you can approach it both ways. When you practice, you might actually, if you keep on doing it, someday it just might click in, and then it's very clear.
Okay. Because when people say, because I've read it both ways, and there's a lot of different schools in the Vajrayana.
There are.
As if illusionary and an illusion are very different things to me. Illusion is...
So yeah, looking at things as if they're dreamlike or illusory, or as a magical display. These are all very different ways of looking at phenomena to help retrain your mind, because we are so used to looking at these things and seeing that they're solid and they're manifesting as a solid, independent existence. And so those are practices and those are methods to help retrain the mind to let go of that solidity, to move from that extreme of appearance and more towards the middle of appearance and emptiness in union.
So we're thinking magical try to help us do that.
Mm-hmm.
That it is dreamlike.
Yeah.
If I'm every now and then just go, oh, that tree doesn't necessarily be any more than my not that it, but somewhere in between.
Yeah. And actually the practical methodology that we should be focusing on for that is actually the deity practice. So as we're doing the deity practice, as we're doing our Vajrayana, as we're doing our Vajrasattva or our preliminary practices, we have a whole array of techniques to practice just that within our meditation session. So we're visualizing a deity that is manifesting full of light. It's not solid in any sort of way. So we're already training our minds like that through our practices. And I think for us, that's where we should be practicing at before we even get to going out in the world. Once we have a solid foundation within doing our deity practice, then maybe we might want to practice doing that a little bit. Yeah, while you're driving. So, all right. So in your packets, you do have a handout of the Vajrasattva practice. And I think I took mine out of my packet. So a little bit of background on Vajrasattva. Vajrasattva is a deity who made a promise when he achieved enlightenment that he would stay and help sentient beings to purify all of their negative emotions and kleshas and obscurations so that they could achieve enlightenment. So that was his goal. And we can therefore rely upon Vajrasattva to help us to do that. And as we're doing the Vajrasattva practice and visualizing him, there are many levels of activity that can be going on in our mind. And as beginners, there might be just one piece of that activity you can focus on at a time. One piece might just be visualizing him in his form, or maybe even just visualizing his hand, or visualizing the lotus seat. If you can't visualize everything, you might just want to do one of those. There's also a mantra that is going on and a recitation of prayers. You might just want to focus on those prayers. Eventually, maybe you could start bringing that focus together and focusing on both of them at the same time. This gives your mind something to do so that you have something to concentrate on. And especially for practitioners of the Vajrayana and who have been doing this lifetime, for their entire lifetime or for many lifetimes, you keep adding on a layer after layer after layer after layer, and it trains your mind, and it makes your mind more workable, more malleable, and you're able to concentrate on more and more as you go along. So you have the visualization, you have the rays of light, you have the mantras that you are reciting, and you also have a feeling within yourself that you are generating not only the devotion to the Guru, but especially in Vajrasattva, the 4 powers that you're relying upon. So you're also thinking about everything that you want to purify. Do you want to purify your obscurations of your body, speech, and mind? Do you want to purify your, your negative thoughts? Do you want to purify some of your feelings? Like, I really want to get rid of that feeling of seeing everything as solid and real. I want to understand what they're talking about when they say the union of appearance and emptiness. Vajrasattva, please help me do that. So and help me get rid of all the obscurations that are preventing me from understanding the Vajrayana. Please help me learn the Madhyamaka so that I have a better basis of that. It doesn't necessarily have to be I'm a bad person and I did X, Y, and Z and I want to cleanse my purifications because I did something bad. It certainly can be that as well. Help me be a better person. Help me grow my compassion. So while you're doing these visualizations, there can be a focus of what you want to focus on, of purifying within yourself, asking Vajrasattva for help, promising never to do it again, and then relying on that actual practice to help you eliminate that and change that within yourselves. So many layers going on there. Not all of them have to happen at the same time, but you can change your focus each time you go through the practice. Does that make sense? So what we have here is a Vajrasattva practice that is a practice in and of itself. You can also practice the Vajrasattva as part of your preliminary practices. So within this practice, before we even start going through it and reading it, there is some opening prayers. There is a prayer for Bodhicitta and a prayer for Vajrasattva, and then there's the actual visualization. So I'm going to stop us as we go along, because I know there are sometimes some people don't understand, oh, I just learned the visualization and now I'm saying the sadhana, and they don't realize that the sadhana is actually the visualization. So we'll go through this slowly. If you have your malas with you, you can use them, because we will go through the Vajrasattva mantra as well a few times, depending upon how much time we have. And we will also do the short Vajrasattva mantra as well. So with Vajrasattva, we do visualize him above our head on a lotus seat above our head, and we envision the light coming down from him through the form of a mitra into our body, purifying all of our negativities. We can also visualize all of our negativities just draining out the bottom of ourselves as we're going through the practice. We visualize ourselves in normal form. We are who we are. Vajrasattva is above our head. And the 100-syllable mantra is going around his heart and emanating light out to the Buddhas, and then from the Buddhas back into his heart. At the end of that practice, Vajrasattva dissolves into light, and then that light dissolves into us. And for the more advanced outer tantras, we would take time and spend time in that quiet state that happens once Vajrasattva has dissolved into us, and we can take a little bit of time and do that today. But then we come back and we start visualizing ourselves as Vajrasattva, but not solid. We visualize ourselves as Vajrasattva in that light form with the 7 mantra, Om Vajrasattva Hum, in our heart, with light radiating out to the Buddhas, back from the Buddhas to us. And then when we're in that state, because we're visualizing ourselves as Vajrasattva, then we visualize white light going out to all of the beings that need assistance. So then we are also, in a way, practicing compassion, breathing in the light from the Buddhas and breathing out white light, and helping all sentient beings in that manner. All right? So let's go ahead and start saying the prayers. When we get down to the visualization, I'll slow down a little bit and we can start visualizing. Just follow along if you're unfamiliar with it, and just recite the prayers. Home, in the northwest of the land of Odhyana, in the center of a blooming lotus flower, is the one with supreme wondrous city, the renowned lotus-born Padmakara, surrounded by a vast retinue of Dakinis, following in your footsteps, I pray, please come and bestow your blessings. Guru Padma Siddhi Hong. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be apart from the sublime bliss that is free from suffering. May they remain in a state of equanimity, free from attachment and aversion to those near and far. Homage, all limitless sentient beings and I take refuge in the Lama, the essence of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and the mandala of the ocean of Vajrasattva, with devotion and from the depths of our hearts. Ho, having entered this mandala of Vajrasattva, for all the father and mother-like sentient beings of the 6 realms, in order to liberate them, with immeasurable compassion, I generate the awakened mind, relative in aspiration and action, and absolute. So this is where we start the visualization, so prepare yourself. And as you read through this, that is what you're visualizing. So as much as you can incorporate what you read here, visualize what you see. And we'll go through it very, very slow, with some pausing time so that you can start generating that. Ah, I am in my ordinary form. Of my head on a white lotus in the center of a moon disk is home that becomes the Lama Vajrasattva. He is brilliant white with complete Sambhogakaya ornaments, holding Vajra and bell and embracing his consort Vajratopa. I take refuge in you and pray. Purify all our negative actions. With the deepest regret, I acknowledge them all and ask your forgiveness. From now on, even if my life is at stake, I shall refrain from indulging in them again. In Vajrasattva's heart, upon a full moon, is the letter Hong, encircled by the mantra. Reciting the mantra invokes your wisdom mind, and from the point of union of the blissful play of Yab Yum, a cloud of Bodhicitta nectar flows down like a shining stream of milk. Through this, for me and all sentient beings of the 3 worlds, may our negative karma and destructive emotions be purified. May the causes of suffering, illness, harmful influences, negative actions, and obscurations, along with wrongdoing, downfalls, and blockages due to breakages of samaya, be purified until not a single one remains. So let's just sit there for a moment and think about what we're visualizing. We are in our normal full body. There is a Vajra on the crown of our head, shining white light, white moon seat, and Vajrasattva. In your packet, if you haven't looked at it already, there is a picture of what you should be visualizing on the crown of your head. That is Vajrasattva in full ornamentation, embraced by his consort, his spiritual partner. And the 100-syllable mantra is in his heart, radiating light out in all directions, in the 10 directions of all the Buddha realms. And that light comes back shining all around them in colorful light. And from their heart, where that mantra is, light in the form of a mitra comes streaming down into us. So we're visualizing light coming down into us and purifying all of our negativities, purifying every obscuration, anything that we have done in any lifetime that prevents us from attaining full enlightenment. And that's full of love and bliss and joy, that we feel that coming into us. And all negativity, harmfulness, darkness, sadness, angst is just easily flowing out the soles of our feet down into the earth and being transformed. So hold on to that visualization as much as you can, even if it's just the light that you're visualizing, or if it's just the lotus moon on the crown of your head. Have that feeling of reverence, have that feeling of being protected and guided by the powerful Vajrasattva who is here lovingly helping you to eliminate all forms of negativity, and have devotion towards him and faith in him, and have regret for all the wrongdoing that you may have done, and know that and have confidence in the fact that it will be purified because of your intention and of your goal, and you're relying upon that method. As you're visualizing that, I'm going to read the 100-syllable mantra in English. So those of you who are not aware of what we'll be reciting, because we'll be reciting it in Sanskrit, you'll understand what that means. So as you keep that visualization going, and I'll just read off the 100-syllable mantra in English. Om, the most excellent of praise, Vajrasattva's Samaya. O Vajrasattva, protect the Samaya. May you remain firm in me. Grant me complete satisfaction. Grow within me. Increase the positive within me. Be loving towards me. Grant me all the siddhis and accomplishments. Show me all the karmas and activities. May my mind be good, virtuous, and auspicious. The heart essence, the seed syllable of Vajrasattva, which is Hum, symbol of the four immeasurables, the four empowerments, the four joys, and the four kayas, are the syllables ha, 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 ha. Ho is the exclamation of joy at this accomplishment. O Blessed One, who embodies all the Vajra Tathagatas, do not abandon me. Grant me the realization of the Vajra nature. O great Samaya Sattva, make me one with you. So that's what we're going to be thinking of as we start doing the Vajra, the 100-syllable mantra. So if you want to, you can open your eyes at this point in time, if they aren't already, and start reading and reciting the Vajrasattva mantra, and we'll do that a few times together. But if you can, keep that feeling going that we've just generated. And we'll go through this very slowly. Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Teno Patishto Drido Me Bhava Satosho Me Bhava Saposho Me Bhava Anurakto Me Bhava Sarva Siddham Me Prayacha Sarva Karma Sucha Me Tsiram Shreyam Kuru Hum Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata Vajra Mame Muncha Vajribhava Maha Samaya Sattva A. Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manu Palaya Vajrasattva Teno Patishto Drido Me Bhava Satoshyo Me Bhava Saposho Me Bhava Anurakto Me Bhava Sarva Siddha Me Prayacha Sarva Karma Sucha Me Chidam Shreya Kuru Hum Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata Vajra Mame Muncha Vajribhava Maha Samaya Sattva A. Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manu Palaya Vajrasattva Teno Patishto Drido Me Bhava Satoshyo Me Bhava Saposho Me Bhava Anurakto Me Bhava Sarva Siddham Me Prayacha Sarva Karma Sucha Me Chidam Shreya Kuru Hum Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata Vajra Mame Muncha Vajribhava Maha Samaya Sattva A. Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manu Palaya Vajrasattva Teno Patishto Drido Me Bhava Satoshyo Me Bhava Saposho Me Bhava Anurakto Me Bhava Sarva Siddham Me Prayacha Sarva Karma Sucha Me Chitam Shreyam Kuru Hum, Ha 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 Ho, Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata, Vajramame Muncha, Vajribhawa, Maha Samaya Sattva A. Om Vajrisattva Samaya, Manu Palaya Vajrasattva. Tenopatishto Drido Me Bhawa, Satosho Me Bhawa, Saposho Me Bhawa, Anurakto Me Bhawa, Sarva Siddham Me Pracha, Sarva Karma Sucha Me, Chitam Shreyam Kuru Hum, Ha 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 Ho, Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata, Vajramame Muncha, Vajri Bhawa, Maha Samaya Sattva A. Om Vajrisattva Samaya, Manu Palaya Vajrasattva, Teno Patishto Drido Me Bhawa, Satosho Me Bhawa, Saposho Me Bhawa, Anurakto Me Bhawa, Sarva Siddham Me Pracha, Sarva Karma Sucha Me, Chidam Shreyam Kuru Hum, Ha 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 Ho, Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata, Vajramame Muncha, Vajribhawa, Maha Samaya Sattva A. Om Vajrisattva Samaya, Manu Palaya Vajrasattva, Teno Patishto Drido Me Bhawa, Satosho Me Bhawa, Saposho Me Bhawa, Anurakto Me Bhawa, Sarva Siddham Me Pracha, Sarva Karma Sucha Me, Chitam Shreyam Kuru Hum, Ha 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 Ho, Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata, Vajramame Muncha, Vajribhawa, Maha Samaya Sattva A. Om Vajrisattva Samaya, Manu Palaya Vajrasattva, Teno Patishto Drido Me Bhawa, Satosho Me Bhawa, Saposho Me Bhawa, Anurakto Me Bhawa, Sarva Siddham Me Pracha, Sarva Karma Sucha Me, Shriyam Kuru Hum, Ha 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 Ho, Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata, Vajramame Muncha, Vajribhawa, Maha Samaya Sattva A. Continuing the meditation, we can recite the next paragraph to conclude that part of the practice. O protector, in my ignorance and delusion, I have gone against and corrupted my Samaya. Lama protector, be my refuge, chief of all the mandalas, Vajra holder, embodiment of great compassion, chief of all living beings. In you I take refuge. I confess all my impairments of root and branch samayas of body, speech, and mind. I implore you, let my negative actions, obscurations, wrongs, and downfalls, all my flaws, be completely cleansed and purified. Before we start the next recitation, take a little bit of time and think about the visualization you currently have and start disillusioning it. And how you can start disillusioning it is, first of all, imagine all the light rays that are coming out of Vajrasattva's heart slowly start to recede back into his heart. And the lotus moon seat and all of Vajrasattva and Vajratopa are brilliant white light, and they get smaller and smaller. And that light slowly recedes all into Vajrasattva's heart until all we have at his heart are the 100-syllable mantra. And that mantra slowly also, one by one in the circle, recedes into that light in the heart of Vajrasattva until all we have left is a little bit of light. And now take that light and let that light, visualize it coming down and merging into your heart. And just breathe with that light in your heart for a few seconds. And as that light is in your heart, we will start building the second visualization, which is on the second page. Feel free just to keep your eyes closed or listen to the rest of us as we recite it and build that visualization from there. This is what you're visualizing. Visualize yourself arising as Vajrasattva. So you are in the form of Vajrasattva, but you're not solid. You're just full of light. And visualize at your heart center the moon disk, the seed syllable hung, surrounded by the four directions by the syllables Om, Vajra, Sattva, from which emanate countless rays of white light. They make offerings to all the noble ones, whose blessings and accomplishments dissolve back into you. And then, shining out once more, the rays of light purify the harmful actions and obscurations of all beings. Consider that they are reciting the mantra together with you. So continue to maintain that, and we will start the Om Vajrasattva Hon mantra. Om Vajrasattva Hom, 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 Vajrasattva Hom, Om 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 Vajrasattva Hom. And now you can slowly disillusion this visualization. Start by thinking about the light rays going out to all the Buddha realms and all the light rays going to all sentient beings. And those brilliant white and radiant colored lights are receding into your heart. And then as they recede into your heart, you and your partner, Vajratopa, also in brilliant light, start to recede into your own heart until what you have left is the Hum surrounded by Vajra Sattva. And slowly, Vajra recedes into your heart. Sattva also recedes into your heart. And the Hum in your heart is all that's left in brilliant white light. And the Hum dissolves into itself and disappears into light. And as this visualization disappears, visualize that and just sit in that emptiness of light and clarity and wisdom for a few moments. And we can conclude with the closing prayers on the Vajrasattva practice on the next page, which will also serve as our closing prayers for today's practice. To Vajrasattva we pray, grant us, without impediment or obstacles arising, favorable circumstances, the fulfillment of all our aspirations and attainments, ordinary and supreme. To all the victorious Buddhas of past, present, and future, praise, dedication as supreme. So now I dedicate all these sources of my merit for all beings to perfect good qualities. Through this very merit of mine, may every single sentient being eliminate all forms of negativity and practice virtue forevermore. May supreme precious Bodhicitta take birth where it has not arisen. Where it has arisen, may it never wane, but continue to grow forevermore. May supreme precious Bodhicitta take birth where it has not arisen. Where it has arisen, may it never wane, but continue to grow forevermore. May supreme precious Bodhicitta take birth where it has not arisen. Where it has arisen, may it never wane, but continue to grow forevermore. And with that, we'll conclude our practice. Thank you, everybody. I just want to say a few reminders. Next week, I believe, is Mary's next class on the 6 perfections, which should prove to be very wonderful. And then the Sunday after that, I will be finishing up my series on the 9 Yanas. And I don't think there's a class the following week, but there's a potluck with Khenpo returning.
No, there is class.
There is class, sorry. Okay, there's a class the following week. That's why I've got my experts in the room. And Khenpo will be back teaching us. And a variety of, I don't know, Kate, if you know what exactly is being planned, but in general, you can, I'll call on you to say some specifics, but in general, Khenpo does teach at least once a year usually, new students, the preliminary practices. So what we practice today is a portion of those preliminary practices. So he does go back and teach a lot of the beginning classes, teaches Bodhicitta and Refuge and the beginning practices, and also continues to teach on some of the more advanced teachings and has moved towards one-day retreats on those. We have the Vajrasattva one-day retreat. We have the Guru Yoga one-day retreat. We have the White Tara one-day retreat. And we have the Poa practice one-day retreat throughout the year at some point in time. Excuse me? And Vipassana as well. That's right. We've just recently started. Awesome. That will be really wonderful.